Would a teacher have to transform how he or she looks at learning and teaching when using Web 2.0 tools? Do you have to rethink your role as a teacher?
Okay, that is a really good question. Because I can imagine that some teachers would be scared about the answer. It is, of course, possible to take a lesson that you already planned and then to deliver it using Web 2.0 tools. That is possible, but it would be better to take the opportunity to really look at what you're planning to achieve in that lesson and use the Web 2.0 tools to achieve more. Because if you're just transferring an old lesson and bringing in a few tools, online tools, then I think many teachers are maybe not so convinced of the value because they say, well, it's extra work for me and I've done exactly the same lesson and it hasn't really changed or given that much extra. Whereas if you change, for example, if you change from saying that we're doing this research in order for you to give me an essay, if we change it so that you use the Web 2.0 tools to make a different product, then it will have an effect. So it would be a good idea to look at your approach to pedagogy and learning and to really think about it. And I know that's a lot of work. And in some cases, it's a little bit overwhelming, especially if you've been teaching for many years and you feel that you've got the process sort of more or less down to a routine. But it's often very worthwhile to really question what you're doing and how you're doing it, and to see if you can give your students more opportunities to think out loud. That's what's known in one book as visible learning. So, and to get all these responses from your students all of a sudden, it could be overwhelming if it's the teacher that has to look at them all. So why not involve people externally? Why not have more peer learning and peer assessment? So that you use the resources that are in the classroom. And this is particularly relevant for adult learners, because when you have a class full of adults, you've got a huge amount of resources right there in the classroom. So that's the long answer. Yes, you can transfer an old lesson and introduce Web 2.0 tools, but you'll get more out of it if you look at your pedagogy and maybe see how you can tweak it so that you give your learners more opportunities for making their learning visible.
The visible learning you are referring to, that's Hattie, right?
Actually, I'm not. I'm a big fan of Hattie, and he did write a book. He has published a book which has that phrase in it. And I would certainly recommend looking at Hattie because he's made a list of the most efficient factors for improving learning. And number one in the list is feedback. Feedback in all its forms. And this is one major reason why you might want to involve Web 2.0 tools, because then you are looking at not just the teacher giving feedback all the time, which can be so time consuming, but also your peers and also external people who are contributing or at least noticing what your class is doing. So I wasn't referring to Hattie, but Hattie is a really relevant person to look at in this regard, because this thing about feedback is really what Web 2.0 is about. No, I was referring, and I can't remember the names of the authors now, but there is, maybe I called it wrong. It's maybe it's called Visible Thinking. So that's why it's easy to confuse the two. But this is a book that's been written by a couple of American authors. And this is about getting your students in different ways to actually explain what it is, their thought processes more. And this is another reason why Web 2.0 tools are so useful, because you can then encourage your students to explain how they came to the various conclusions that they came to, go through the processes that they went through for their research and so on and so on. So Yeah, visible learning, visible thinking, two very important things in my opinion. For the visible thinking, there's actually a very good website with lots of resources, so you almost don't need to to buy the book. There is a huge amount on the website.